This is really remarkable and goes to show the power of the most powerful plugin I've ever used. I think it's at least for affecting sounds heavily. It's called Immorph. Anyways, so what I wanted to be able to do is synthify any sound. So my thinking was, like you have a sound playing and then it becomes a synthesizer with synthesis capabilities. So what I was able to do very quickly because of the power of this cool plugin was just have two lines going. They're dubbed lines, the same line, and it's an acoustic guitar feeding this very cool synthesizer that comes with Logic Audio. And I kind of messed with the preset a little bit to make it fit my vision for this idea. Because the thing with the vision is I'm trying to get sort of the synthesis parameters to be able to bake them into this acoustic sound as needed and vice versa. So we have really an incredible ability now through this plugin because it does such a good job of it. Whatever they did to morph between the spectrum of sounds, the A and the B, was such a good recipe that it's just produces great results. So I'll get to the sound itself. So here's a blend of both of them. Now I have the main track muted so you don't hear like an overdub of that, but of course you can leave that open if you want to hear more of the acoustic guitar. So here's the both of them. Now if I slide this all the way over to B, you would hear just the acoustic guitar. And if I slide it all the way over to A, you hear just the synthesizer. So that's a really drastic synth because I wanted to get something that would be fairly obvious. Hey, I'm morphing into something else. So it would go more like this. Now, there's a lot of additional things that can be done to finesse how this works. But the main thing is, like, if let's say you're doing a lead melody, it could also be chords. Just think, here I did some chords. You strum the chord, but instead of just strumming the chord, you morph simultaneously. And it doesn't have to be that drastic. You can, alter how the dry wet functions on that and do a lot of different things actually. But so what I was thinking was, how instruments, when you're playing them, you have this incredible cool articulation capability to make it more interesting, even when it's something very basic. So as an example of this, if I took this synthesizer and I lowered the volume a little bit, we could mess with how drastic that morph functionality is. And there's actually a couple different ways to morph with this plugin itself, because you have a basic ratio system here, but then you have a dry signal feed and a dry B. So there's many different ways to do that, and this particular GUI is just one way of doing it. And there's a lot of complex things that can happen. I mean, this is one of those things where you can spend, like, just even spending 4 minutes making this video, it's like nothing, because this is such a powerful plugin to be able to explain just some basic things. But my other thinking about this is, so once it's morphed and you have your dub set up the way that you like, that's where the beauty of using the synthesis parameters comes in. So, you set up the morph so that you're hearing more synth, and then you kind of finesse like the filter of the synth. And if I wanted to get something that would mesh better, all I would do is EQ the tones to be similar in their frequency spectrum range, and make the volume however I wanted for the dry end of each signal. And therefore it would gel. So the main thing here is you want to think of it as one sound. That's the beauty of, you're not just combining acoustic articulation. Now you're truly combining a whole synthesis engine powerhouse. And with different kinds of filtration, you're going to get more or less drastic effect on this hybrid, a true hybrid system. We're taking drastically different things, an acoustic environment versus this synthetic environment, and we're taking it to the next level. And so the other thing is, here I have just sent this to one instrument. And what I could have actually also done is send this to a pad or a bus of instruments, so that I can have different kinds of synth bleed in and out and adjust the volume of those synths as needed, or any kind of instrument. It could be a different kind of guitar or whatever. So in doing that, you have the capability to then, have an even more sophisticated morph. And that's really how this just goes on indefinitely, to the unlimited possibilities of the kinds of ways you could morph. But in that way, you're morphing into a stack. And the stack itself, you would have one lead sound like the guitar that feeds into this stack of, let's say it was a stack like this, of other instruments. And so in that way, you can bleed these in and out using touch automation as desired. So really, really powerful ideas here to be able to create new kinds of new level sounds. But really what we're going after is this first initial idea of, being able to transform. And so you're not just morphing, you're transforming the idea of an acoustic instrument into a synthetic instrument with different possibilities. But in the summing of those two units, you have a powerful capability that's really not really well explored yet, because people aren't doing these kinds of sound design these days on the pop radio or whatever, because they're chasing things that are very similar to whatever's popular, because that's what's kind of the thing to do for the commercial radio world. But it's gotten really a wash lately, because there's been a loss of this intuition and this desire to make these kinds of unique offerings to people. I could strum one chord here using these systems, then the one chord would be more interesting than so much of what you hear on the regular radio, because this kind of stuff takes vision and time to create this stuff, and people don't necessarily have that inkling to pursue this kind of material, because again, it's just not a request. So that's where I fall in, is more on the the driving cutting edge of this kind of material. And this is just an idea to blend very powerful things. Instead of starting from scratch and saying, let's reinvent the wheel, I'm saying, let's take what we have available and be blown away by the capabilities of what can be done with it. I didn't add any DSP to this. I could have added, like reverbs and things like that to further mess with the signal. Or I could have even added something like the articulator idea that I created, which is to superimpose articulation concepts on already articulated sounds. So you have like a doubling in articulation. I could have added things like that. And so it just goes on, and it's really remarkable and really impressive. So these guys did great work, and that's why I love to be able to utilize these kinds of things to stand on the shoulders of these giants who created these awesome plugins.